Hello, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 4 World Ablaze mod, and we're playing as Italy. So I was just thinking on, should Ethiopia be defended? Some, and I'm not sure here, but whether you try to release Ethiopia to or you can, some mods have it, to an Italian puppet state specifically, not just release it back to Ethiopia, but as an Italian thing. Let's presume for the moment we're not in a mod or playing. And hello, Mr. Coco Man, how you doing? Or whatever, that we're just trying to turn it into some sort of puppet state and abandon it to its fate. Should it be defended? Yes and no. Complicated answer. Should you try hard to defend Ethiopia? No. And Eritrea and Somalia. But no. But should you have some defenses in there? Yes, I think so, because you do have a local level of supply because of some of the factories. And so you can have in your mountain, so you can stick a few units in here and make humans or AIs, but we're often fighting the AIs, keep forces down here to deal with you, hopefully enough that will allow you to, say, push Cairo. Now, so a little bit of defense. The other thing is, should you be defending or should you be on the offense in Ethiopia? Well, to give a bit of historical context, Italy did go on the offensive. This was, at least at the time, it was yet to be Free French. It was, and there's not much here in Djibouti as a French colony, or French Somaliland, however you want to call it. But it was very good. Harmony, how you doing? I don't know if it was strongly Vichy French, but it's sort of Vichy French, so it's sort of neutral by the time things kick off down here and functionally during the period of the British fighting the Italians down here, or the Commonwealth, however you want to say that. It was more or less neutral. Little side note, it was sort of up here in this part of Madagascar. The British invaded because it was a Vichy colony. They had some R-35, I believe it was, the two-man tanks. I mean, it could have been the H-35s or something, but I think they were the R-35s. Not the FT-17s of World War I, but R-35s down here when the British invaded. And those weren't like brand spanking new, as sort of like adoption date 1935. Though they produced them, well, they switched over to the R-39. Or is it, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they were over to the 39, which is basically a more powerful gun. Instead of, because there was the H-39 and the H-35 and the R-35. I don't know if Renault ever did the 39 series. And so, I don't know if the tanks that were here when the British invaded in late 41, I believe it was, were here before France surrendered, which sort of makes me go, oh, really? They send, they got lots of them, but they're the new tanks. They send them out to Madagascar. I think the Vichy government, I don't have the facts on this, but I think the Vichy government sends like a squadron or whatever, because it's like a cavalry unit or whatever it's called, of light tanks down to Madagascar. And this is after the French allow Japanese occupation. Most of the French troops stay in Indochina when the Japanese occupation. They give up all their heavy equipment but they still basically have their rifles and ammunition and basically live in barracks during the war. It's sort of a weird situation there for the French. And the Vichy French government were, I don't know whether unable or unwilling, because this is before Japan is at war with the rest of the world outside of China, were unable or unwilling to remove their troops, maybe hoping that if we just sort of ignore the situation and leave the troops there, something will happen to Japan and we'll get our colonies back. I don't know. But the British are very afraid that Japan will come in, whether fully occupy Madagascar or simply use it as a base for submarines. I know we're sort of talking on about other topics here, so we will continue, but I hope you find this interesting. During the sort of late 1940, once, Italy's at war with Britain, until mid to late 42, once, the Sicily invasion is happening, British supplies cannot effectively be moved through the Mediterranean. And these are supplies going in both directions. Or supplies, but also resources. There's lots of food being grown in Australia as well as Canada that are going to Britain. And, just as part of the general colonial empire, there's other resources, and maybe food, I'm not sure, coming from India. Maybe not too much food, but I don't know. They're all going to Britain into the industrial complex. Most of the colonies are not what we would consider industrialized. Hey, Suter, it's been a while. Good to have you here. And so, all that, a lot of it goes through the Suez Canal. Well, that gets shut down by the war. Yeah, we could talk about, and I've read some, the heroic convoys into Malta, and there's a few dashes through the Mediterranean of warships all the way through. So there is some of that. But effectively, to supply Egypt, to supply when the British are in Greece, to supply everything out here, to supply Iraqi and Iranian oil to the British industrial complex, because including some of the oil is good enough to ride out of the ground. Thank you, very, very loud motorcycle. To be, ship's boilers, to run straight out of the ground. They don't need to be processed. But, that's keeping. Now, you got to process it for like diesel engines and submarines and other vessels, but the big turbines, not so much, I don't think. So whether it's straight out of the ground or refined fuel from this part of the world, Britain needs everywhere. And so this here is a massive lifeline here for Britain, a choke point, if you will, if the Japanese base submarines out of Madagascar in any sort of number. Now, Japan has an institutional problem. Been a while, not sure how often you stream, but I got a couple of weeks at a time in between jobs. Plenty of time. Well, very good. Watch, yeah. Mostly I stream right now, Friday afternoons in America, Saturday and Sunday mornings, and also in American time here in California. Hearts of Iron Friday and Saturday, and Sunday War Thunder. So just anybody out there, keep that in mind if you want to catch me live as opposed to not. And I like the interaction with people here, not just talking while playing. Okay, so Japan, and I know I'm sort of keep jumping back a little bit, but Japan does not effectively use their submarines at all for commerce warfare. That is not their naval doctrine. That is not the sort of warrior and samurai. And a lot of samurai families move into the Navy. So they have these samurai traditions in the Navy. And so they want to use their submarines against enemy fleet assets, whether they're, the great thing would be go sink the carrier. or battleships or cruisers or whatever, or use them as scouting elements for fleets. Submarines on the surface aren't super slow, but they may not be very fast like a destroyer. But still, you just sort of spread them all out, and if big danger comes, whatever that may be, whether air, ships, or whatever, just dive and go away from it. But with radios, report enemy fleet movements. So they do not use them as commerce raiders. But because Britain is smart and Britain is feeling the commerce raiding of Germany, is definitely afraid of Japanese commerce raiding with submarines. They do a little bit, just a little bit, but not that much. And so it's more of a fear than any plan. There was some talk, I think, of Japan quietly, if you will. I don't know if secret's the right term, but quietly using Madagascar as a sort of a refueling, getting more food, because part of it is fuel on the submarines, part of it is water. A lot of submarines, I know American ones, have some distillation capabilities on submarines, turning salt water into fresh water, but even that is a limited amount of use. But also food is something to keep going. So whether quietly showing up here and getting restocked, or whether coming in here, setting up a Japanese naval base, have some ships that, fast merchant ships come in escorted by some naval vessels, land with lots of extra torpedoes and whatnot to keep full activity up there, and maybe a significant Japanese garrison. Britain is very, very afraid of that because, again, they can't move stuff through Italy. To come this way around can be done, but just adds much more time. And yes, if you're starting out here in Eastern Australia, it might not be the huge, I don't know how much supplies, but I do know most of the stuff coming out of Australia seems, from different sources, seems to go past Africa and around. But of course, you're moving stuff up here in India, again, as I was saying, in Iran and Iraq. It's just better to go this way. So it could be a massive problem. And of course, once you have submarines out there, you just put a few long-range scout planes out to find whether it's individual ships or convoys. This would be a massive, massive problem. Oh, Simeon, how you doing? Massive, massive problem for Britain if this becomes a Japanese or even a German base. So sometime, and I'm just going all this off of memory, I read an article many years ago about it. Britain decides to invade Madagascar, and it is held by Vichy. And they're under some understanding that this Vichy is going to fight. The command here is going to fight. Like I say, they had some, I think it's like 12 or something. I think they're the R-35 tanks down here in Madagascar. So I think they were moved after the fall of France out here. I think there were some other units that were thought to be loyal to Vichy were moved out to here. Now, also remember, and again I'm jumping over, Vichy was limited, like Germany was after World War II, to a limited size of army. But they were not allowed to recruit new units in their colonial army. They I believe, were allowed to shift some of their units out of France as part of the reduction down to the size of army that they were allowed to have, some of their units out of France to the colonies. Now, one of the sort of tricks that Vichy did was to increase the size of the units. So, and, no, we still have four platoons in our company. It's just our platoons have got 30% larger. Instead of 30 men, they're now 45 men or whatever. So they did a lot of this sort of, without telling the Germans that they're recruiting more recruits, whether local, Moroccans or French people living in Morocco or French people traveling from Vichy, fleeing possible whatever and signing up to for a job in the army kind of thing. This is when they're still under Vichy control. There was a whole program by the French to increase the strength of the French army, partially in the colonial areas by, you know, not adding any more units to it. And since the Germans weren't really coming out and inspecting just how many soldiers were in the barracks, they just weren't informing them of the increase in size. So they're out here. And to the point, and the reason is not just the British show up and land, they actually have to battle their way into the main control points. It all takes place up in the northern part of Madagascar here. This is sort of where like some of the major port would be. And it's a campaign. And the Vichy forces don't fight hard. And, they're not like, fighting to the death or anything like that. They fight until whatever position they're in is getting flanked, getting turned around, and then retreating into another one. And then, it's fighting until they're sort of at a disadvantage and then retreating or eventually giving up. So it's a real fight, but it isn't, and men on both sides die. But it isn't meant either for the Vichy or for the British, to fight to the death. It's just fight until, oh yeah, hey, we're in a good position. Our machine guns are set up, our mortars are set up. There's the enemy. We're going to shoot at them. Once they're, oh shit, we're getting, shelled and bombed, and they set machine guns up on those hills and are shooting at us. We're out of here, kind of thing. So it's very willing to fight, but not so much willing to die. Might be a good example for the cause. So there is in 41 the British invade here. I know we're still talking about Ethiopia, but it's sort of in the theater. So as that's going on, or before that even going on, Italy declares war. Now, there is nothing, I don't know how big this unit is, Southern African, okay, we have some vague idea here. 4 to 19 infantry units and 1 to 4 artillery units, okay, all in one unit, so probably that's a rather strong unit there, but whatever its strength is. Second West African Force, like a similar sort of vague statement of strength. But it's nothing like this when the war breaks out. Kenya, there's, in southern Sudan, or just Sudan, has some occupation forces, not a whole lot. They bring up some Australian, some Indian Army, some South African, and take Ethiopia here. The British do. Now, but when this breaks out, the Italians are much better positioned. They have stockpiles of munitions. They never really run out of munitions. More, their supply dumps get overrun as they have to retreat, or they decide to retreat from British advances. And so some of this area, is not terribly defendable, because Britain does bring up a lot of areas, and the new areas that they sort of retreat into are newly conquered, but could be well defended. But before all this happens, Italy launches an offensive into British Somaliland, which does rather well. The Britain is able to evacuate some of the forces out, but to Aden. But Italy does have a victorious campaign of taking this, and there's nowhere near these levels of forces. Right. Okay, so do we fight? Okay, so if you're playing this game, do you try hard to hold Somalia? Well, if you think either Germany or you is somehow going to rapidly be able to take the Suez and then get supply lines down to here and do that, sure. I think, and we may end up trying it, you know, coming in invasion out of Rhodes to somewhere here, having a lot of naval forces so that we have naval superiority, so we can do a naval invasion into Egypt. And yeah, we might be able to do that. We might be able to do this and pull this off. But we got to make sure we have enough forces up here to link up fast enough. Now, if you're not sure you're going to do that, but you might look at it and go, hey, we can put a lot of forces here and push out. Take British Egypt, take British East Africa, go and take these areas. And that might be very doable to happen, but it's not looking like I want to do that now. So what we need to do is have some forces down here that are going to sort of, this is 8% resistance strength, 8%, it's just out here, 0, didn't expect any, but just wanted to see. Okay. Hopefully we don't get too much. Oh, what do these look like? Division Coloniale. Okay, so we're going to leave the Division Coloniale. And we're going to take some of these proper divisions out of here. Let's send you over to there. And so we're going to, okay, now see, I would have what looks to be a pith helmet, but I'm sure that's just supposed to be a helmet of some sort. As my Division Coloniale symbols if I had to. Let's move you up to there because I want the AI player. And now, of course, this is. I just don't know whether this is a good idea to turn on a British South Africa, British East Africa, into, you know, the AIs. I don't know, or whether it's better just to have them as Britain. But okay. Maybe move you up here as well. Okay, and just for the moment move you to the front there, just to sort of scare the AI into thinking that, yeah, this is going to be a tough fight. Are you ready for it, kind of thing. Let's move them to there. We have, this is going to be one of these light divisions. All right. Well, we might be wanting to move into there, so let's send that to there. Now, what is our equipment looking like currently? Light tanks, 57. We are making just almost 3.5 tanks in a week. Right. I think they were making more than that by 38, or could be. I don't think we're going to really try to push into France. So some of my more mobile divisions will go there. You come down to there. I'm definitely very looking much for mobility versus immobility, I guess. So I do want to put... We'll probably both of these into there. Make sure we don't get pushed through the town. Sounded like potato. Do Italians eat a lot of potatoes? Surrender your neutral network humanoids. Oh, toy jet. I rejoice for that you are one with the hive now. I think you're off your meds again, boy. Surrender your spaghetti. Never. That's too good eating. That's going to be a province that can be hit from 3 of theirs. This is another one that's going to be hit from 3 of theirs. We have some of these new fascist black shirt divisions, which look like that. Decent divisions. They got it light tank backup. All right. Okay, these guys are fairly decent then. Because these don't have... Don't think. I'm just checking to make sure. Yeah, don't have that. So if these are all the same, they look good. Okay, it won't necessarily be fast, but a little bit of armor is nice. So we're going to, well, let's send one of you to North Africa. One of you up here in the mountains, give them a little bit of armor protection. Hello, Arno. Yeah. I don't know what to do with them, really, quite honestly. These guys here, talking about the divisions he hates with 1 armored battalion. It's not, you know, look. Guderian and others are right, are correct, that it is best to gather your armor, not like pure armor, but your armor with, you know, a divisional type, armor division type elements, you know, with infantry support, artillery, all this stuff. And then concentrate those divisions at one point on the battlefield and attack with overwhelming superiority. He's absolutely right about it. And you want a lot of speed. Okay. Now, we're Italy. We're not the Italian Empire looking out here, but we're Italy. Let's just look at Italy. Where do you do that? You're Italy. And this is one thing that people often... I know it's Italian black shirts, but still, right. A lot of people look at military forces, and I'm very guilty of this too, in sort of theoretical terms. And especially as an American, at times in our history, we've had forces set up to specifically fight in the American conditions. And we can think of the Indian Wars, you know, moving east. And so, you know, sort of cavalry troops, because you don't need infantry, you don't need artillery, because they'll just slow you up because you're fighting the Indians. And the Indians, yes, can raid very fast, but generally they move mildly quick because, you know, they move their whole communities around and they need their sort of community support. So you need patrolling forces. So yeah, sometimes in our history we've had it, but most of the time in our history, since probably, I don't know, well, because you can even look back at the Mexican-American War in the 1850s, when we fought all the way down to Mexico City. You know, realize this. Before the American Civil War, the U.S. puts up, you know, the U.S., which is really mostly people up here, and they did have Texas, just barely, puts together an invasion army that fights all the way down and takes Mexico City. So Yeah, there was a proper Mexican-American War before the American Civil War. It came fought all the way down and against strong imperialistic Mexican army and took Mexico City. And there was some very heroic fighting. Um, some of the later officers later, of course, become or famous generals in the Civil War that did some very big heroics. Fighting into Mexico City and whatnot. You can read about some of that. But mostly the American armed forces outside of, fighting the Civil War and outside of mostly the American armed forces are set up to fight somewhere else. And you don't know 5 years in advance whether you're necessarily going to be in the sandbox or fighting deploying to Lithuania or Latvia, or fighting there, or being deployed, I don't know, well, we have sort of units stationed permanently in Korea, but deployed to defend in Taiwan, or an emergency reaction to maybe a military coup in Burma or whatever. Yep. Yep. People forget about that. No, it's there's a lot of history to goes on. So the U.S. or deployed to, I don't know, be some sort of peacekeeping divisional force between India and Pakistan or something. So the U.S. Army is set up to go wherever, and they don't necessarily know years in advance to organize themselves up. They might know weeks or months in advance, but that's different. Okay. So when you're one of these nations, you have an idea of the terrain you're going to fight in. If you're Switzerland, who, is going to fight here, it ain't going to fight over here. Now, yeah, but even their national policy will not allow them, because they're not a member of are they? They may have joined the UN. I don't know. Originally, they were not. I don't know if somebody wants to look up and see if Switzerland is a member of the United Nations. I'm not sure that they are, but they'll never do peacekeeping forces anywhere. They're sort of, so they're never going to deploy out here. They know they're only going to fight in this region, even if they try to become an imperial power. Oh yeah, absolutely, Harmony. But they know they're going to fight here, so they designed their military forces for this environment. UN and okay, thank you, because I know for a long time they weren't a member of the UN, because it is sort of a non-neutral body, if you will. Thank you. In 2002. So yeah, they know they're going to fight here. Now, Denmark did maybe even still send some troops to help fight in Afghanistan or something like that, but that's just small expeditionary elements. So they look at their environment to what they're going to fight in. Well, so with Italy, you got to look, and we're not looking at colonial or imperial Italy out there. We're looking at this Italy. Where are you going to use an armored division? Seriously. And I've not gotten all the way through it. I read about a third of it and got distracted by other things a few years ago. Iron Arm, which is the best book I could find anywhere, and I ordered it, on the Italian armored forces, tanks, not just on the tanks, but on the creation and development of their armored forces, which really start happening in more like 40-41. It doesn't happen very early. Now, they've got tanks before then, but the idea of, and this is what you got to see with the armies, tanks before the start of World War II were often just seen as armored motorized cavalry units, not as armored divisions. So they were sort of like, hey, yeah, we need some reconnaissance gallopers. Well, instead of on horses, we'll have motors. Well, let's put them in like an armored thing. Oh, they can go across country. So it's like a CV-33, or, the Italians did their Fiat version of the FT-17, which was very fast. So it's just sort of like, yeah, here's some tanks. And that's what this is really, is just some tanks that are operating as armored reconnaissance, really, in my opinion. But also sort of dashing breakthrough. Switzerland was unarmed peacekeepers and Bosnian observers in. Oh, that's it. Okay, I did not know that they even had unarmed peacekeepers. I do understand that through the Red Cross element of Switzerland, and even they did during World War II, there was a little bit of Red Cross observers, sometimes in POW camps, sometimes sort of up at the front. I know there was a few Swiss Red Cross observer types, and I mean a few as in like 4 or 5, in with German forces, during the Eastern Front campaign. So I do know that, and they were military, Swiss military people there, but they were there as sort of Red Cross observers. So I know they do some of that type of stuff even before this, but it was more through the Red Cross, which is a sort of Swiss-based organization, that they've gone around and did that, but not as a armed interventionist forces of, like, they didn't get into Korea, I know. Yeah. Reconstruction they do. Yeah. And that again is sort of like, I think, through the Red Cross type office element of it. So, so before World War II, the tanks aren't necessarily seen as a major combined armed element that shouldn't just be taking whatever hussars and giving them tanks and, doing the same roles. And so you don't necessarily want to create huge cavalry divisions, especially in the age of the machine gun and you're in the mountains. So Italy is going along wanting some tanks, making tanks, building tanks, but they're a support element to everything else. And so, again, I understand your criticism and why you don't like it, but, where are you going to do your into Yugoslavia? Okay, maybe, these are sort of hills. Yes, they have some mountains, but a lot of it's sort of hills. But you're surrounded up in Austria and Switzerland and France by mountains. You got lots of mountainous territory here. Yeah, you can dash around here maybe a bit in, armored division fashion, but you're mostly coming around here to block invasions or whatever. So they did not see too much of a need for armored divisions. And, this is what they're calling here 2nd Division Sierra Emilia Filberto. Don't know who he or she is, but that's, Celera or whatever. It's a fast division to them. And so they're seeing light tanks, they're seeing motorized, they're seeing some cavalry. Maybe we should change that to improve the speed a bit here. Motorized artillery. I wonder what would the cost be to get rid of those cavalry units. Edit. Well, we may have the battalions. No, we don't want to do that. Reset. Okay. We want to go mobile battalions, motorized infantry. Battalions, motorized infantry. Okay, and I'm looking for. Okay, well, we have almost enough, and probably enough to make it before too long, because we just need, 75 or so, 76 technically right now. I know we are using up some in motorized to get over there. So yeah, this should increase the speed of the unit and maybe the effectiveness of the unit. So we will save that. So now we are in a, something of a panzer, something of an armored division here. Bunch of tanks, they're light, and that's all we have at the moment, so that's fine. Got some motorized artillery, some support artillery, a decent amount of infantry to be a decent division. So, yeah, okay, so we have a couple of these divisions. One here, I think, just one here and one in Spain. It also appears to me that the game does not appreciate infantry, support, tanks, assault guns enough. Some people tend to go either for armored prepared divisions or no armored divisions at all. Right, yeah. I don't know how well the game reacts to some of that ideas. And this sort of, like I was saying, Guderian and crew are correct in the idea of massing your striking power. I license the Flak 88 from Journey. Smart move. and attacking. Absolutely right. But the French are also right in that if you have an infantry division, brigade or whatever, but an infantry division, and you give them a couple of companies of tanks, whether they be a modern, in the modern today sense, a company or two of M1 Abrams, or a company or two, of R-35s or CV-33s, or even, Panzer IVs, in the middle of the war. That makes that infantry division stronger. Maybe not strong enough to resist a proper thrust of enemy armor coming at you, but definitely stronger in dealing with other enemy infantry divisions, whether they have tanks or not. So if your force size and budget, sort of like modern day U.S. armies, is not a mass mobilization army, and the modern U.S. Army can afford enough tanks to have armored divisions, as well as stick either a few platoons or a few companies of tanks in with infantry divisions. We've got enough tanks, enough ability. The budget isn't based around can we afford the tanks and all that support element of it. It's how big of a standing army does the U.S. want to have today. If for some reason we need to go mass army someday and we need lots of armored divisions, we very well may shift all the armor and focus it into a few armored divisions. But right now we can spread it out. Okay, so for Italy dealing with this, and if we're being attacked by French infantry forces that may have little anti-tank ability, and having some tanks to give that hardness in the game, get some Stugs, yeah, or SPGs, yeah, in the game here, in terms to defend this, it very well might be a very good idea to have that little bit of stiffening in the forces. Now, for me, I've got 5 of these by event. Whether I want to build more or not, I'm not sure. What do I do with them? Okay, let's take a look at them. They only have motorization enough for, I guess, for this unit or whatever takes some motorized elements, so they're not going to be fast. They got combat assault engineers. Okay, so horse-drawn logistics company. So they're not going to be fast. So they're not going to dash into the British. And am I going to hate this mod, people? Is everywhere freaking, or is it just Mersa Maruth that have defenses? Is there defenses all along this goddamn line? There are defenses back here that are going to make this impossible to get. I hate when games do this. I hate when games do this stuff. Mersa Maruth, I don't. Tobruk was better defended. Yeah, I hate when games do this. Well, we'll see. I may rage quit after a while. Port garrison. Just okay, one time. Well, if it's well, it's 3 land. Because there really wasn't this kind of stuff around a level 3 fortification. Yeah, I know there was some sort of whatnot, and I think it was more back at Mersa Maruth or whatever that the Italians attacked. Oh, man. Look, people, we all know the AI sucks. Hearts of Iron 4. And mod makers, including, I know Uncharted, who makes this mod. Really? Level freaking 3. What the hell is he thinking? What's the level along here? Level 5. Okay. Oh man, no, I don't know. So obviously we'll swing around this when we come here, but it just seems like overkill. maybe a level 1. Some mods have a difference between forts and sort of pillboxes, and can have several levels of pillboxes. That would probably be more appropriate, or the minimum level. Because I do know that Germany, do you have Germany's defenses along here? Germany built a lot of defenses along here. They did sort of before, and this is when Poland was still in existence. They were building fortifications along here. Do we have those? No. What's your strategy for Air Force? Fly planes around. Basically, I'm going to try to use the air power to help with control of the Mediterranean, and then just control my skies and use ground attack planes to affect the battle space. Hello, unpronounceable Russian name. How you doing? That's what I basically say to anybody who's writing to me in Cyrillic or has a Cyrillic name. I mean, he didn't write in Cyrillic, but I can't read it. And so, yeah, a couple of these might be nice as, shall we say, support divisions and pushing around the British here. Yeah, I don't know what to do with the rest of these. We'll leave one in Rome just to make sure that something weird doesn't happen. I don't think the AI is going to do a lot of invasions, since we're not playing humans here. Alamein is hell in this like in real life. Oh, well, I forgive El Alamein a little bit because I don't think the AI is going to build defenses there, but that's still a bit of an overkill, and which again makes me think maybe we should see about controlling the the sea area here and just invading back somewhere in here. Probably around Port Said would be best, and to get a port quickly undefended, try to control through here and do that, and that bypasses El Alamein. We just have to do enough forces to make it holdable back here or something. It is better for us to push to here. No, push to these two. These two provinces here are key for defense this way, because this province can only be attacked from this province, and this province up here can only be attacked from here. Well, as I'm looking, but you see, if we come, well, these, because if we fall back to here, either one, there's always going to be one province can be hit from two positions. Where if we're here, obviously we have to defend way out into here, and they can concentrate forces and swing around. Like I was saying, hey, I let you paradrop behind them, funnily enough, and take the port. Well, paradrop, that's another option if we have that. Germany, I think I'd do a better job at paradropping, but looking at that better. If you can concentrate your forces, like, hey, yeah, we've got 3 British armored divisions, put them here, because you can either attack here or here, and you can defend here. And so they have to make each one of these 3 provinces, and particularly these 2 provinces, strong enough to defend. And of course, if they start shifting forces into here from these other places, you can then do probing attacks to try to keep them from shifting their forces and break through. But if you're on a narrow front, you just stack, I don't know, 6 divisions here and 6 divisions here, and you just hold out with a couple of divisions, in the reserve to move up as needed, and replace divisions that loses their organizations. Matildas are very much pain to fight. Oh, of course they are. So yeah, I don't know how well we're going to be in doing this, but we will look at that. You know, this has been a lot of analytical, and this is going to be an analytical episode of our strategy. So we've got to, we're building 2 infantry divisions. This is still just 38. Now remember, our war doesn't start at least until 1940 something, so we're still quite a ways out. But okay, we've got lots of infantry equipment. Not enough motorized or support equipment. That's going to be more of the pain. Okay, so what we want to do here is find support equipment here. Let's add 2 factories there. Let's look at our light machine guns. Okay, we got 1,000. I don't know quite how many divisions used, but I think we have enough to go to newer models. I think we're just going to keep the artillery, even though some of it is outdated, some of it isn't. Just in production, so that they are cranking them out. Okay. Right. Well, I think we're going to end this analytical episode, not the live stream or anything like that. But for now, so thank you all for watching. Thanks for liking the video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, and you can do all that if you're live now. But see you next time for more, yes, even more Hearts of Iron.